Have you ever caught yourself thinking, maybe it's too late for me to change? Too late to start over? Too late to follow my dreams? What if the truth is that at whatever age you are right now, you are actually just getting started? Welcome back to Single Parent Success Stories. I'm your host, IRINA, and today's episode is all about hope, renewal, and creating a life you love at any stage of your journey. In this conversation, I sit down with Allison McCune Davis, an author, traditional naturopath, an encourager of women in midlife who believes that 60 is a pretty great place to start. Alison shares how embracing aging can actually bring freedom, how natural health and simple daily habits can support longevity, and why encouragement and community are absolutely essential when you are trying to change your life as a single parent. We talk about how to build habits gradually instead of trying to fix everything at once, how milestone birthdays can be a powerful time for honest self-reflection, and how decluttering your home and your mind can lower stress and bring real mental clarity. Alison also dives into planning and organization, practical ways to set up your environment for success, and why it's never ever too late to follow your dreams. If you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or wondering if your best years might be behind you, this episode will remind you that a new chapter is always available, and that small intentional changes today can completely transform your tomorrow. Let's dive into this inspiring conversation with Allison McCune Davis. Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. This holiday season, skip the candles and gift cards. Give the woman in your life something that truly matters, or better yet, give it to yourself. The gift inside is for every woman who spent decades being everything to everyone else. It's time to remember who you are and rediscover your happiness. This isn't just a book, it's a permission to put yourself first again. Available now. Because the best gift you can give is helping someone find themselves. Welcome, Alison. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here.
Thank you. So just please share with us in your own words, who is Alison?
Well, it's funny. I had someone ask me that the other day, just sort of like that. And I am an encourager. I think that is ultimately what I am, and it really kind of came out in all the different aspects of my life, just from, I used to be a TV producer before I got married and had kids. And that's kind of like you're gathering all these people and creating a conducive environment for them as artists to shine and really do their best work, whether they're a writer or a cameraman or a editor or whatever, encouraging all of them to be their best, right? And then I had all these kids and I homeschooled for 20 years. Like it was there too, and that just really is who I am. And so when I came to decide to write this book and then I've got an online program for it, it's encouraging now women of midlife. All the things I talk about in that book are great for any age, male or female, but I am, the age that I am, so that's who I'm really encouraging and tend to hang out with are other women who are, getting to midlife and beyond and wondering, what am I doing with my life? So I think that I'm an encourager.
Totally. I love that. What makes you happy?
Oh my gosh, what makes me happy? Being with my family, that's just what everybody might say, but it certainly is. That's just has to be kind of the ultimate, as a parent, I remember just thinking and hearing somebody say along the way, your goal is to raise children that you love to be with, right? They turn out to be, pretty good people. And boy, that's a hard thing. You're just forming them and you're just blood, sweat, and tears over them for so many years. And so, I love to be with them. I also love to just create things and kind of build things. And I kind of like, once I get done with that, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. I don't, they say we need to celebrate our accomplishments, and we sure do. And I absolutely believe that. I have to make myself do that instead of just rushing off to the next thing. So like we've flipped some houses, renovating, and then I love to needlepoint. Like that's my reward at the end of the day. And it's creating something that's beautiful and heirloom quality that, they'll live longer than I will. So my kids can have them. And so those things.
I love it. I can relate to not celebrating and always
Can you?
chasing the next thing. I think it takes a conscious effort to slow
It
down.
really does. It really does. I'm like, in fact, I said to my husband just the other day, I was like, do you realize our 30th wedding anniversary is next year, like in 6 months? And he said, it is? I said, yeah. He said, it's not our 29th. I said, no, it's our 30th. And we've got to celebrate. I mean, and both of us kind of just are type A personalities. We're just sort of always moving and going and the next thing. So I really have to make myself stop and do that. I think that makes a good life.
Totally. You're right. How do you help people?
Well, I help them with the subjects of my book, which are natural health combined with longevity principles from a bunch of different studies, and then making a plan and executing on that plan to create those habits. And they are lifestyle habits that we're just not used to creating because we live in a world of modernity. It's just a modern world it's very different from, say, the blue zones. Most people have heard of that. I'm surprised that some who haven't. But so just in case, the blue zones are those 5 areas in the world. They're working on number 6 right now, identifying it. But that where the largest group of centenarians, 100-year-olds, live, and live healthily, not in nursing homes or things like that. And so the big studies have been done on what do they have in common, those 5 areas, because they're all over the world in different places. And what can we do? How can we look at that and, make those little changes in our lives? So, and it wasn't just the blue zone studies. There's cancer studies, there's big Harvard studies, and they all seem to be saying the same things about what lifestyle habits are the key core ones. What the book does, it brings those down into a framework where, and the name of the book is 60 is a good start, but it has a double meaning. 60 days is a good start. So it takes at least 60 days to create a new habit. It might be up to 8 months, and we know this through Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a neuroscientist, and she's looked at the nerve cells in the brain and can see the formation of habit on the dendritic spines, get a little medical there, of those cells, and can see the formation of habit. And so that's how we know it takes at least that long. So my goal is to get people to choose, ideally 3 things in the 3 categories that I have that these all fall under, which is body work. That would be the physical body. What are we eating? Are we drinking enough water? Are we moving our body? Are we sleeping well? Are we breathing well? And then brain work. So that's the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of our life. And then world work, which is our purpose and our relationships. So all the lifestyle habits fall into those 3 categories. And so I'm helping women, choose something from each of that. Let's do it every day for 60 days. So you start building those habits one baby step at a time. Because we have to, the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, because I'm definitely like, I'm going to do all these things. It's so funny. I was talking to a friend of mine literally yesterday who was telling me that she was at the gym with a friend of hers, and the friend, who was a little bit younger, showed her this Excel sheet. And I was like, spreadsheet. And I was like, okay, I'm already scared. With all this whole list of things she was going to start doing, in her life every day. And we just kind of laughed about it because we've been there. We've done that, and she was like, well, I'll just do it for a week and see what happens. But that's when things don't happen. That's when people quit, when they've set themselves up with too much to try to change their lives and make these new habits. So, it really has to be little bit by little bit, but it totally it's doable. I think accountability is real important in that, but it is definitely doable. So that's what I'm encouraging women to do right now.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I also wrote a book called The Gift Inside and kind of follows the same schemes as you were sharing about, physical,
Awesome.
emotional, mental, and spiritual. And you're right, it's all about habits. Because all habits are great because they all produce a result. And if we don't like the result the habit is producing, we got to change the habit.
Exactly.
And we get to choose what kind of life we want.
We do.
Whether we want to be sick or we want to be well.
That's right. That's right. One of my favorite lines is our future is hidden in our daily routine. I don't think we do this very often unless, we're really talking about it. But that question of who do I want to be a year from now? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of lifestyle do I want to have a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And really think about that. And then once we know I want to be fit and I want to be, whatever all the things are, I want to be doing certain things. Then we've got to little by little add action steps daily.
Yeah. What happened in your life so that you decided to start asking those questions? What do I want to be like a year from now?
Yeah, I think so when I turned 40 and 50, those decade birthdays, I remember the year leading up to those birthdays just becoming really introspective and asking these, just in my mind, these questions of, what am I doing with my life? Am I doing what I should be doing? And when I was 40, I was pregnant with my second. I started later than a lot. And then when I was 50, I was adopting our fifth. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm pretty much doing what I should be doing. This is all good. Actually, also at 50 is when I kind of started teaching other women about natural health, like locally in groups or online. But then when I was 60, again, I was asking those questions, but it was different because my older three were pretty much out of the house. I still have the younger two here, but they're very independent. It's not the same, as when I had all my little chicks here and just, living life. And so I was asking those questions again, but this was different. I just felt very restless. I still love teaching women these things, but I needed something different. I wasn't feeling that excitement waking up every morning, ready to sink my teeth into whatever was on my plate for the day. I just needed something new. And so I went on like a little 7-month odyssey, I guess, and I just said to myself, I think I'm going to have to say yes to some things that aren't that thing, because I was thinking, what am I going to do for the next 5 to 10 years? I was thinking, gosh, in 10 years, I'll be 70. In 20 years, I'll be 80. That's a shock to think that. What a shock. And so I thought, I'm just going to have to say yes to some things. I had, there's a little more time, white space, margin in my brain, versus in the midst of raising kids and the chaos of all that, right? And so it was about a 7-month period. And I started when I saw this, I got into this Facebook group where these people were really living life, and the guy that ran it wanted you to have what he called a misogi, which is a Japanese word for life-changing experience. And he wanted you to have one every year, because he wanted you to create memorable experiences. So you could say, well, back in 2021, I remember this was my misogi. I did blah. It could be anything. It could be climb a mountain or lose some weight or write a book or repair a relationship, or just, it could be anything. And so, but you just needed to decide, what's it going to be? So I'm in this group. I didn't know any of these people. They were all ages, male, female, and I'm just sort of reading through, the posts, and for several months, about 3 months. And I finally one day, I didn't know what my misogi was. So I was still thinking, what can it be? What can it be? And this lady pops up and she says, I'm going to do 75 hard starting tomorrow. Does anyone want to do it with me? Do you know about that challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. That's why I call it that. It's a physical challenge for 75 days. And I had heard about it and listened to the podcast 4 months prior. And I thought, oh, there's no way I can do that. That there's just like, this guy's all the muscles and tattoos, and I'm not his target market, forget that. Well, then the only thing that had changed was I was in this group. I wasn't really even saying a lot in the group. I was just reading a lot of what people were talking about. And she said that, and I thought, I wonder if I could do that. And I listened to his podcast again, just this one thing. And I thought, I think I could arrange my life to where I could do that. And that could be my misogi. So I did it. And the only thing that changed, and I like to tell this to people, it was just a mindset change. That's all it was. And it was just because I was in that group reading and listening to different people talk about doing really great things in their life and challenging themselves and all this kind of stuff. That was the only thing that changed. So, that there is something definitely to who do we hang out with? Who are we listening to? What's the influence in our life? And it needs to be good, right? It needs to be uplifting and like listening to your podcast, whatever it might be. So I did that. And then I also was in a little mastermind online, again, with all ages, women, and just asking kind of some of those questions. What are we doing? Are we aligned with what we should be doing in our life? And finally, it was that July, so 7 months later, after I turned 60, that I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to write a book. And it took 3 years. So that's what I did. And that was just combining my, probably 30 years of natural health study and getting certified as the naturopath, but also my fascination with longevity. And then, most importantly, creating an action plan for people, because I could spit out all this information, but what good is it going to do if there's not a plan to execute on it? So there's a planner, there's a book, there's a second book that's just the planner for 60 days. The book leads to the 60-day dare. And a person could do it on their own, although I think that's very hard. I think you need to do it with someone else, friends or whatever, or I have an online group where we do it together there. So lots of options on how to do it, but I do think accountability is important to kind of hang in there with somebody and encourage each other.
Totally. When somebody is going along, and people learn better when they're in a group setting.
Yeah.
Like in your case, you joined this Facebook group. You weren't even typing anything. You were just reading other people's
Yes.
That encouraged you to.
Yes. It made a big difference.
What if I could do this thing?
Right.
Even though it looks crazy, it seems crazy.
Right. And here we are.
Yeah. What is one habit in your book that's your favorite?
Well, we are in the middle of a 60-day dare right now in this online group. We are on about day 35, I think, day 36, yeah. And I am doing something in bodywork, brainwork, and world work. I'm doing two things in bodywork, actually. I am eating 30 grams of protein before I eat anything else each day. So that was a big thing I needed to work on. It's hard to get a lot of protein, but so important for us at this age. I mean, we've got to build muscle and we've got to have protein. And anyway, so I'm doing that. I'm also doing some deep breathing session every day. But my favorite thing is what I'm doing in brain work, which in brain work, there's the big five in each category. So you're going to pick something within the parameters. So there's writing, journaling, there's reading, uplifting nonfiction, self-improvement, personal development, could be business development. The third one is called clear, and clear has to do with either decluttering your house or detoxing the chemicals out of your house. That goes to the natural health, any kind of cleaning chemicals or skincare, makeup, or toothpaste, or all of that stuff goes into our skin, into our bloodstream, and affects us negatively. So that's a real important side of natural health. But also the decluttering your home. I mean, that really goes to your mental health. I remember I have a big floor-to-ceiling wall-to-wall bookcase over here in this room. And I remember one day thinking I was stressed out. And why was I stressed out? And I realized that every time I walk in this room, I look at that wall, and it is just this jumbled mess of books. So I finally reorganized it. It took me quite a while to have it by color. So all the black books and the red books and that doesn't work for everybody. People might want it by subject or whatever, but for me, just the way my brain works, that just made a huge difference. So every day I am decluttering some part of my house for 15 minutes minimum. Sometimes I just do it for the 15 minutes, and sometimes it goes on for an hour or two. It just depends on the day. But that has been my favorite so far because I've just made such a difference. Like this top drawer of my desk right here has been a mess for a good year or more. But finally, I just did this top drawer, and I'm so happy. So it's so funny how just those little things like that make a big difference. And it's just 15 minutes. I just have to do it every day, 15 minutes.
Totally, I love it. You're so right. The decluttering, it not just takes space in your home, but it also takes mental space. And
Yeah.
like you said, every time you would go into the room, you see this mess
Yeah.
of things, and it's like, oh, it's so
Yeah.
annoying. I don't
It's
want
very
to.
annoying.
I'm actually reading right now The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, and one of the things he talks about is those incompletes or things that kind of little annoyances that we have in
Yes.
our home. Something
Yes.
is messed up or broken, and making a point to finishing that. And I love how in your case you say it's 15 minutes. It doesn't take too long, and how much space and freedom it creates in your mind to now you come into the room, you probably look forward to looking at your beautiful.
I do. And people comment on it.
I recently decluttered my closet and also was like a mess. And now I come in and I get to see a little room and breathe into the space, and I'm more welcoming to come in there instead of ignoring. I
Right.
don't see it anymore.
Right. It's huge. It's probably I don't know if it's a bigger deal for women than men, but I'm going to guess that it is. We're nurturers, and to nurture, we need to have a nice nest.
That's true. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't worry about what other people think. Probably would be a good one. I haven't worried, I don't think, too much about that, but I think probably we all do. I think, what's just so important is to follow our dreams. I feel like I've always been pretty good at that, and that is what I really try to tell my children. Like, you have got to love what you do, and God put those dreams in your heart. So, like, don't ignore that inclination to do what you love. Fortunately, when I went to college, I found a major that I did love, which was TV and film production, because I loved photography when I was a kid growing up, and it just kind of naturally went into that. Everybody's so different. We have 5 kids, so it's been just interesting watching each of them, grow up and figure out where their skills are, where their gifts are, and, what to pursue. Yeah. What else I don't know. Those are probably the main things. Don't worry about what I remember. Okay, so this will go to your audience a little bit. So I'm married for the second time. I got married when I lived in LA. I was 29 and was married for just 2 years and then got a divorce. Well, I had a big wedding back here, in my hometown for that marriage. And I remember when I was getting a divorce, I was talking to my best friend on the phone, who was also from this hometown, and her mother and my mother were good friends. And I remember just saying, oh my gosh, what's everybody in our hometown gonna think? This is awful. So I guess I did care what people thought. That was like 35 years ago. But and she told her mother that I said that, and her mother said, oh gosh, they're gonna talk about it for 10 minutes and then they're gonna be on to the next thing. I never forgot that. That was so good. And, just like, yeah, exactly. Regarding anything, something like that, which seemed huge to me and embarrassing and all of that. But the truth was, yeah, they'll talk about it for 10 minutes and then they'll be on to the next thing.
I think that's very profound, because oftentimes we live a life, what somebody's going to think, what they're going to say.
I know it.
People are so busy living their own life.
They are. They don't care. I mean, they just, that's why you got to do what you got to do.
Because people are going to talk whether you do or you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not just do you?
Right.
Follow your dream and do what fits
Yes.
your soul.
It's huge. You only have one life. Got to live it.
Yeah. Speaking of that, what do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
In a child, I mean, I remember when, I guess it just depends on the different stages, really, but I do remember when they were little, and I had a really great friend who was such a good mother. She was kind of a mentor to me, and we both homeschooled, and it was like in those early years, I mean, even like, up to 6, 7 years old, that obedience factor is huge. It's like that was more important than teaching their ABCs. And not, of course, you got to talk to them and help them understand why and those things as they can understand it. But that really goes to ultimately, I think, creating a child that is a good citizen of the world in those younger years, really being able to do that and just, requiring that respect for authority, because if they can't obey their parents in those younger years, then how are they going to obey other authority that they will ultimately have, like, ultimately the police or something like that. But I think that's important. But of course, the other thing that I already said was sussing out what their gifts are and then helping them go in those directions of what those are and appreciating those gifts, and if they're not good at this thing over here, well, like, just don't worry about that, Don't make them a cookie cutter, which I'm afraid happens all too often. What else can you do in a school? And my kids didn't just homeschool. They homeschooled, and then various ones ended up like in their senior years. And my youngest one has been in school the whole time, because I ultimately got burned out. But so we've done everything. We've done homeschool, private school, public school. We've been at all the places.
What was your favorite one out of all the different schools that you tried?
Homeschooling really was. I loved it. I just believed in it. When my 2-year-old, my oldest was 2, I put her in this little Montessori school. They had a 2 to 3-year-old program. And it was cute and sweet, and I love the Montessori method. And then I had the next one, and I just had this gut feeling that this child was thinking, oh, I'm not the only child anymore. She was 3.5 at that point. She's being pushed out, and now there's a new baby. And I remember going to watch her through the window of the Montessori school when I had this new baby, and I thought, my gosh, God gave her to me because I'm supposed to be her major influence. I'm supposed to teach her. I always tend to ask the question of what was happening 100 years ago, because in our modern world, I think it gets so complicated and, everything's just different. And so, because 100 years ago was kind of similar to 1,000 years ago, or let's just say 200 or 300 years ago is similar to 1,000 years. What was going on then? Well, of course, everybody was homeschooling then, even 100 years ago. So I really loved that. But, I did it for 20 years, and I did get kind of like, okay, I just can't do this anymore, which is fine. We go through changes in life. And so I put them in good schools, and they're not bad. Don't let me say that. But each child really had a different experience in our case. So it was certainly an experimental lab.
Totally. Thank you.
Yeah.
What is your superpower if you had to pick one?
Superpower. I think it's being a planner, because that's the hardest part for people, like the planning. That when I was a TV producer, you had to plan and organize. There was one point I was doing a PBS series of 26 30-minute shows, and we were literally shooting them all at the same time. We would be interviewing this one guy for shows 3, 8, 15, and 20. So we were having to consider, like, okay, these questions are going to go in this show. and writing and shooting, just editing. It was just this jumbled mess, so it had to be super organized. That's just the job of the producer. And then in the homeschooling world, it was the same thing. It's planning, organizing. I always joked that I was kind of a planner addict. I would plan everything. That made me feel really good. Not that I was always great at executing on it. But, so that was why this book, and, just, I always also joked that I'm like, someday I'm going to create my own planner. And every time I'd see one, I'd buy it, research and development, and then I wrote the book and I'm like, we got to have a planner that goes with this book. So I think it's that ability to plan and execute, and then to stick with the plan, to be like, here's the planner. Well, it's right here. I'm looking at it multiple times a day to make sure I'm getting those things in, because I do move fast. I am a type A personality. Maybe there's a little ADHD in there. I don't know. People talk about that all the time now. But I'm moving fast, and so, but I also have learned that I've got to slow down too. Have the kind of life that I want to have.
Totally. I love it. I think it's an important trait to have, planning. All your life is planning.
It is.
Organizing and making sure.
What am I going to do next?
Yeah, so awesome. Where people can find your book?
Well, everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you find books. It's probably in your library too. And then I'm on Instagram, Facebook, my full name, Allison McCune Davis. And then my website.com. If you go to AllisonMcCuneDavis.com/links, there are links to kind of everything, to the book, where you can buy the book. And then there's Audible also, if you prefer to listen. And then there's also, it says free guide there's a free download that you can get if you go to that website, of my favorite supplements and practices that I use to keep my immune system boosted and healthy and energetic.
Nice. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
I think the only other thing that I like to say is environment triggers behavior. And so our goal is to set up our environments to trigger the behavior we want, because we get most of our cues visually. So, for instance, if you're going to try to eat more fruits and vegetables, then I would say get those glass bowls to put your fruits and vegetables in, put them at eye level in the refrigerator, so it's the first thing you see when you open up your refrigerator. Have your tennis shoes sitting out, not hidden in the closet. So you put them on, and then you're more likely to walk out the front door or go to the gym or walk down the street, just kind of, it's like one little thing at a time. I have a little cushion on the floor over here. So I'm more apt to sit down on the floor at my coffee table versus sit in the chair. I mean, I sit in the chair too, but sometimes I'm going to sit on the floor and kind of stretch a little bit. They do that in Japan, and their beds are on the floor, so they're up and down, more. So it's just always think, like, I have my supplements in little baggies right when I walk in my office. I see them, I grab one. And so they're in my vision, and so, I'm going to do that thing. So I think that's real important as you're trying to create these new habits.
You're right. You're so right. It's like what you surround yourself with and what is in your visual purview.
Yes.
Speaking of that, what is your one non-negotiable thing that you cannot live without in your day-to-day life?
Day-to-day life. As I grab for some water, probably that. Let me just see here. I mean, I think I take supplements and various supplements throughout the day that go to energy. Like I have some great, like B vitamins. B vitamins are all about energy, and they can just kind of go through us too. So I take some in the morning, and I take some maybe early afternoon. And then I have some other supplements that I feel like that's part. Of course, eating right and moving your body and all that. But I feel like my driving motivation for the last 20 years has been, I've got to have energy to do the job of being a mom, to now at 60, I'll be 65 this year, to do the job of being 65 and, whatever else I'm doing. It is all about that energy level naturally. I want it naturally, right? Probably that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to have you. We'll include everything in episode notes. And I love your motto, that 60 is a great time to start. It's never too
Yes.
late.
Never too late. Never too late. Thank you so much.
Thank you.